Picture yourself walking along a sun-drenched street in ancient Rome. The air is thick with the scent of spices and the sound of merchants calling out their wares. Your eye catches a flash of gold from a nearby stall, a delicate ring crafted with a coiled serpent. It's beautiful, certainly, but to the Roman who wore it, it was so much more than just an accessory. That serpent wasn't merely a decoration. It was a secret symbol, a powerful amulet believed to ward off evil and ensure good health. This is the hidden world we are about to enter. All around us, in museums and history books, are countless pieces of Roman jewelry that appear, at first glance, to be simple expressions of wealth and status. But if you know how to look, if you understand the secret language of symbols, a much richer and more complex story begins to emerge. These pieces were a silent language, worn on the body, conveying everything from deep religious beliefs to daring political allegiances, from heartfelt personal prayers to potent magical protection. Today, we are going to become fluent in that silent language. We are going to decode the secret symbols in Roman jewelry, uncovering the messages that Romans wore every single day, hidden in plain sight. This journey will take us from the most intimate aspects of their lives, love, family, and fear, the grandest stages of power, religion, and empire. Think about what it means to carry your beliefs and your identity with you, not in a phone or a wallet, but physically engraved on a ring, a bracelet, or a pendant. For the Romans, jewelry was a deeply personal fortress and a bold public statement, all at once. A simple carved gemstone could be a declaration of loyalty to an emperor, a symbol that might save your life or condemn it, depending on who was in power. A seemingly innocent image of a dolphin might be a fisherman's plea to Neptune for a safe voyage, while a soldier's bracelet, etched with the image of Mars, was a direct request for courage and victory in battle. These artifacts are tiny, intimate time capsules. They don't just tell us about the vast, impersonal machinery of the Roman Empire. They whisper the hopes, anxieties, and secret thoughts of the people who lived within it. They reveal a society that was profoundly superstitious, deeply political, and intensely personal, where the boundary between the spiritual world and the everyday was blurred, and where your jewelry was your interface with the divine, the political, and the magical. So, as we examine these stunning creations, we are doing more than just appreciating ancient art. We are piecing together a lost world of meaning. We will explore how a simple metal disc could be a powerful amulet against the evil eye, how a ring could signify membership in a secret cult, and how a cameo could broadcast a complex political propaganda message that everyone could see but only a select few could truly understand. This is a detective story written in gold, silver, and gemstones. It's a chance to see the Roman world through their own eyes, to understand what they valued, what they feared, and how they navigated the complexities of life through the symbols they chose to wear. Get ready to look at Roman jewelry in a way you never have before, because we are about to uncover the big secrets hiding within these small, beautiful objects. Perhaps the most striking and, to modern eyes, unusual symbol of protection was the Fascinus. This was the image of the phallus, depicted in everything from tiny, delicate amulets to large, ornate sculptures mounted on buildings. For the Romans, this symbol was not vulgar. It was vitally important, a powerful force against misfortune and evil. The word fascinus is linked to the Latin verb fascinare, meaning to cast a spell or to bewitch, which tells us exactly what it was meant to do: to bewitch and neutralize harmful magic directed its way. Its origins lie deep in Italy's ancient past, connected to fertility cults and the worship of a minor deity literally named Fascinus, who was considered a fundamental spirit of life, and generative power. This connection to the very essence of life and creation is what made it such a potent weapon against forces of death and decay, like the evil eye. This symbol was absolutely everywhere in daily life. Parents would hang delicate Fascinus pendants, often with wings for extra speed and power, around the necks of their babies and young children to protect these vulnerable new lives. They were embroidered on clothing, carved into bakery ovens to protect the bread from ruin, and even mounted on the chariots of generals celebrating a triumph. Imagine a powerful Roman commander at the absolute peak of his glory, parading through the streets of Rome. Hanging from the underside of his chariot, swaying with its motion, would be a large Fascinus. This was a crucial ritual, as the tremendous envy and negative energy directed at a man of such supreme success was believed to be incredibly dangerous. The Fascinus was his magical shield, deflecting that ill will and ensuring his good fortune continued. The widespread acceptance of such a bold symbol speaks volumes about the Roman worldview. They were an intensely practical people, and their spirituality was deeply intertwined with the tangible world. The life force represented by the Fascinus was a simple, undeniable fact of nature, and harnessing its power for protection was seen as a logical, even necessary, act. It was a common, unembarrassed part of the visual landscape, a direct and powerful reminder that for the Romans, safety and fortune were not abstract concepts, but something you could literally wear around your neck to keep the darkness at bay. While the Fascinus offered a very public and powerful form of protection, other amulets carried a more personal and intimate significance, particularly for the women and girls of Rome. One of the most beautiful and meaningful of these was the Lunula, a delicate pendant crafted in the shape of a crescent moon. This was not a piece of jewelry for just anyone. It was specifically bestowed upon young girls, often at a very early age, and it was a symbol they would wear throughout their childhood until the day they married. The name itself gives away its purpose, derived directly from luna, the Latin word for moon, instantly connecting the wearer to the divine influence of the celestial body that governed the night and the feminine cycles of life. This connection was made explicit through its association with the goddess Diana. As the virgin goddess of the moon, the hunt, and the wilderness, Diana was a complex and powerful figure. She represented independence, strength, and chastity, all qualities a Roman father would hope to cultivate and protect in his daughter. By wearing the symbol of Diana, a young girl was placed under the goddess's direct protection. It was a charm against the physical and spiritual dangers of the world, a silent prayer that she would grow up pure, strong, and safe until she reached adulthood and transitioned into her role as a wife and mother. The Lunula itself was typically a simple yet elegant piece, often made from thin, beaten gold or sometimes bronze. It was designed to be lightweight enough for a child to wear comfortably. But its simplicity was often deceiving. Many of these pendants were meticulously detailed with fine engravings. Some featured tiny, precise dots or lines representing stars scattered around the crescent, creating a miniature galaxy on a pendant no larger than a thumbnail. Others might have included very subtle references to Diana's other domains, like a tiny hound or a minuscule bow, further strengthening the symbolic link to the goddess. The meaning of the Lunula was twofold, acting as both a shield and a signal. It was a protective amulet in the most practical sense, but it also communicated the girl's status to Roman society. It declared that she was a cherished daughter, under the watchful eye of her family and her patron goddess, and that she was on a specific life path toward marriage. Its removal upon marriage was a powerful rite of passage. Taking off the Lunula symbolized the end of childhood and her protected status under Diana. formally exchanging it for the new symbols of her adult life, the marriage ring and the stola, the garment of a married woman. Archaeological finds of these pendants in the graves of young girls offer a poignant, silent testimony to this tradition. A parent's final gift of divine protection for a journey into the afterlife. A testament to a love and a hope that transcended even death itself. But while the young girls of Rome were under the watchful eye of the moon with their lunulae, the boys were granted a different, and arguably even more significant, amulet, the bulla. This was not a simple pendant, but a small, hollow locket, typically round or heart-shaped, and it was placed around a newborn boy's neck just days after his birth in a ceremony that formally welcomed him into the family and the community. This act was far more than a celebration. It was a critical ritual of protection. The bulla was designed to be a portable fortress, a sealed container that held within it a collection of potent protective charms. These could be rare herbs, inscribed papyrus scraps with magical words, or even tiny carved figures of gods, a concentrated bundle of supernatural defense, meant to surround the child with an invisible barrier against evil spirits, envy, and the ever-present threat of the evil eye. The material of the bulla itself was a direct and immediate public declaration of the family's social standing. For the sons of the elite, it was a gleaming piece of crafted gold, a valuable object that signified immense wealth and privilege from the moment of their first breath. For a boy from a common family, his bulla would have been made from far more humble materials, often stitched leather, but it was no less important. The power was believed to reside not in the cost of the container, but in the ritual itself and the protective objects sealed inside. This fascinating distinction shows us that the fundamental anxieties of Roman parents, the fear of infant mortality and malevolent forces, transcended class. But the ability to visibly display one's status through the answer to that fear was a privilege reserved for the wealthy. A gold bulla was a statement. It told the world that this child was not only protected by the gods, but also by a powerful and affluent family. This amulet was a constant companion throughout a boy's childhood and adolescence, a physical token of his protected status. He would wear it every single day during play, during his early lessons, and as he began his physical and military training. Its importance was most profoundly highlighted during one of the most significant ceremonies in a young Roman man's life, the formal coming-of-age ritual where he transitioned from a boy to a citizen. Around the age of 14 to 17, a boy would officially lay aside the childhood garments of his youth and put on the pure white toga of a man, the toga virilis. As a central part of this ceremony, he would also carefully remove his bulla for the last time. This moment was deeply symbolic. He might place it on a small household altar as an offering to the lares, the protective spirits of his family home, thanking them for their guardianship throughout his youth. In other cases, especially for a young man from a noble family, he might vow to wear it again in the future should he achieve the high honor of leading a triumph through the streets of Rome as a victorious general. This act of removal was not a rejection of protection, but a recognition that he was now a man, capable of defending himself and his republic through his own strength and virtue. The bulla had done its job, seeing him safely to the threshold of adulthood. For many families, these cherished amulets were then carefully stored away, becoming precious family heirlooms, or they were even buried with their owners, a final protective charm for the journey into the afterlife. Each excavated bulla, whether a crumbled leather pouch or an intricately decorated golden sphere, is a powerful artifact that speaks to the universal hopes of parents and the very Roman way of marking a boy's place in the world, from his first breath to his first steps as a citizen. Moving from the specific protective amulets of childhood, we find another creature slithering through Roman jewelry, carrying a far more complex and potent set of meanings, the serpent. Unlike the singular purpose of the bulla or lunula, the serpent was a multifaceted symbol, revered not as a creature of fear, but as an embodiment of healing, rebirth, and guardian power. Its image, elegantly coiled around a ring, or woven into the design of a bracelet, was one of the most sophisticated and spiritually charged symbols a Roman could wear. This profound respect for the serpent was deeply tied to the god of medicine himself, Asclepius. His cult, imported from Greece, became immensely popular in Rome, especially after a plague led to the building of a temple to him on the Tiber island. Asclepius was instantly recognizable by his primary symbol, a single serpent entwined around a staff. This was no random choice. The serpent, by shedding its skin, was a universal symbol of regeneration and renewal, the very essence of healing. For a civilization without modern medicine, the idea of the body shedding sickness and renewing itself was a powerful concept, and the serpent became its ultimate emblem. A ring bearing this image, then, was not merely decorative. It was a direct plea to the god for his intervention, a wearable prayer for health. But the serpent's role extended beyond the temple. We have accounts from historians like Pliny, the elder, describing how live serpents were kept in the healing temples of Asclepius, and they were believed to be physical manifestations of the god's power, licking the wounds of the sick to cure them. This practice directly influenced personal jewelry. A gold bracelet fashioned as a coiled serpent, its scales meticulously detailed, was believed to channel that same divine, healing energy. It was a permanent personal temple wrapped around one's wrist. A person suffering from a chronic ailment might wear such a piece, believing its constant contact with the skin would transfer its rejuvenating properties into the body, fighting off illness and restoring vitality. The design of these pieces is a masterclass in ancient artistry and symbolism. The most common form was the Ouroboros, a serpent forming a perfect circle by biting its own tail. This ancient symbol of eternity and the cyclical nature of life made for a powerful and beautiful ring or bracelet. Other pieces featured two serpents facing each other, their bodies intertwined, which some scholars suggest could also be linked to fertility and the joining of opposites. These items were crafted from gold, silver, and bronze, often with gemstone eyes of carnelian or glass paste that would catch the light, making the creature seem alive and watchful. This function as a guardian was just as crucial as its role in healing. A serpent coiled around the arm or finger was seen as a vigilant protector. Its unblinking gaze was thought to see and ward off the incoming malice of the evil eye or malevolent spirits that were so often blamed for sudden illness and misfortune. In a sense, it was a more sophisticated, divine version of the Fascinus. It protected not through brute force, but through wisdom and its sacred connection to the earth and the underworld, realms from which it was believed to draw its ancient power. We see this protective role immortalized in Roman frescoes, where serpentine figures are depicted as guardian spirits of households, known as agathodemons. Wearing a serpent ring was like carrying a tiny, personal household god with you wherever you went. These exquisite artifacts, now resting in museum cases, are so much more than ancient baubles. Each coiled form represents the deep-seated human desires for health, safety, and renewal. They tell a story of a people who looked to the natural world for answers, who saw divine presence in the slither of a snake, and who believed that by wearing its image, they could harness a fragment of that sacred power for themselves. It is a timeless testament to the hope that we can, in some way, wear our well-being on our sleeves. Soaring above the protective serpents and the amulets of childhood was a symbol of ultimate power, one that dominated the sky and the empire itself, the eagle. If the serpent was a personal guardian, the eagle was the very embodiment of the Roman state, a creature of such immense significance that it transcended mere fashion to become a direct statement of allegiance, power, and divine right. This majestic bird was, first and foremost, the sacred animal of Jupiter, king of the gods. Jupiter wielded the thunderbolt, controlled the weather, and stood as the supreme protector of Rome and its laws. To wear his symbol was to align oneself with the highest authority in both the heavenly and earthly realms. A bold declaration of faith in the empire and its divine patron. This connection was made terrifyingly real on the battlefield. The eagle, or aquila, was not just a symbol of the Roman legions, it was their soul. Each legion carried a single eagle standard, a magnificent sculpture of silver or gold, mounted on a pole and escorted by the most senior soldiers. To lose this standard in battle was the ultimate disgrace, a catastrophe that could lead to the entire legion being disbanded in shame. The eagle standard was a focal point for loyalty and courage, a constant reminder that every soldier fought under the watchful eye of Jupiter himself. It's no surprise, then, that this powerful military insignia found its way into the personal adornments of those who served. High-ranking officers and soldiers with means might wear brooches, rings, or pendants featuring an eagle. This was more than pride. It was a wearable token of their sacred oath, a personal claim to the valor and divine favor of their legion, and a powerful protective charm for the dangers of war. Wearing an eagle was like carrying a piece of the legion's spirit with you. For the political and social elite living in the heart of Rome, the eagle motif took on another layer of profound meaning. During the rule of the emperors, the symbolism of the eagle became tightly interwoven with the concept of imperial power. The emperor was the divinely ordained ruler, the intermediary between the gods and the people of Rome. As such, imagery that connected him to Jupiter was a powerful propaganda tool. Emperors were often depicted with an eagle nearby, and the bird was frequently shown carrying a laurel wreath up to the heavens, symbolizing the apotheosis, the deification, of a deceased emperor as he ascended to join the gods. This imperial association made eagle-adorned jewelry a sophisticated political statement. A senator wearing an intricate gold eagle brooch to fasten his toga wasn't just accessorizing. He was broadcasting his loyalty to the current regime, his membership in the powerful inner circle, and his endorsement of the divine right of the emperor to rule. It was a symbol of prestige that separated the elite from the common citizen. The craftsmanship of these pieces reflected their importance. We find stunning examples in gold and silver, with finely detailed feathers and sharp, commanding beaks. Some pendants were made with precious gemstones like sapphires or emeralds for the eyes, making the gaze of the eagle piercing and lifelike. These were not hidden amulets, but proud, visible declarations worn on the chest or at the shoulder, impossible to ignore. Historical accounts from writers like Suetonius and depictions on triumphal arches and coins bring this symbolism to life. We read of the lavish regalia associated with imperial power, and we can easily imagine an emperor's own ceremonial garb being adorned with eagles. Visual evidence shows us eagle-topped scepters, and the birds embroidered on official robes. For a citizen seeing a high official wearing such a symbol, the message was instant and clear. This was a man who moved in the highest spheres of power, a man under the direct favor of Jupiter and the emperor. The eagle motif in Roman jewelry beautifully illustrates how personal adornment could be a complex language, speaking of faith, loyalty, ambition, and an unwavering belief in the divine destiny of Rome itself. Another fascinating piece of this symbolic wardrobe moves us from the grand imperial eagle into the more intimate realm of personal bonds and promises, the Hercules knot. This was not a simple twist of cord. It was an elaborate, intricately woven square knot, a design of such structural integrity that it was believed to be virtually unbreakable. Its very form, with its interlocked loops and tight symmetry, was a visual representation of strength, resilience, and security. And as with so many symbols in Roman culture, its power was drawn directly from a foundational myth, in this case, the legend of the demigod Hercules. The connection stems from the story of Hercules and the Nemean lion. To conquer the beast whose hide was impervious to weapons, Hercules had to use his raw, physical strength to strangle it. After his victory, he famously skinned the lion and wore its pelt as his primary armor, its head forming a helmet. The knot that secured this legendary pelt across his chest became iconic in its own right. It was the knot that held the very source of his power and protection in place. By adopting this knot, Romans weren't just referencing a story. They were attempting to harness a fraction of that heroic, unconquerable strength for themselves. It became a symbol of binding things firmly and safely, of creating a connection that could not be undone by misfortune or malevolent forces. Nowhere was this symbolic power more beautifully applied than in the context of marriage. In a Roman wedding, the Hercules knot took on a profoundly important role. On the day of her wedding, a bride's tunica, her long under tunic, was fastened closed not with a simple clasp or pin, but with a belt or a cord tied exclusively in the Hercules knot. This single, deliberate act was packed with meaning. It was a powerful public prayer for a strong and secure union, a marriage that would be bound as tightly and as permanently as Hercules' lion skin. It was an invocation for the couple to possess the resilience to withstand any challenges life might throw at them. Furthermore, the knot carried a potent association with fertility. Just as the knot was tied to secure something precious, it was believed to help secure the bride's health and her ability to bear healthy children, ensuring the future of the family line. This symbolism extended beyond the wedding day itself into the jewelry given to commemorate the union. A common gift from a groom to his bride was a necklace or a bracelet, known as a vinculum, where the central clasp, or a recurring motif, was a gold rendition of the Hercules knot. Archaeological finds, such as those from Pompeii, give us stunning examples of these pieces. Imagine a delicate gold chain, and at its center, instead of a pendant, a finely wrought gold knot, each twist and loop perfectly sculpted by an ancient artisan. This was a piece of jewelry she would wear every day, a constant, tangible reminder of her husband's vow, and the unbreakable bond they had formed. It was her personal amulet for the marriage, a charm for fidelity, safety, and enduring love. The knot's popularity wasn't confined to bridal wear alone. Its appeal as a general symbol of protection and good luck was universal. We see it carved into stone altars, woven into the borders of clothing, and featured in other types of jewelry worn by both men and women. Its enduring presence throughout the Roman era, found in artifacts from Britain to Egypt, speaks to its powerful and instantly understandable message. In a world of uncertainty, the Hercules knot was a promise made tangible. It was a declaration that some things, be it a marriage, a vow, or a prayer for protections, could be tied firmly enough to last forever. Now, as we move from the earthly authority of the eagle and the binding strength of the Hercules knot, we ascend to a symbol of cosmic power that came to dominate the late Roman world, the unconquered sun. In the 3rd century, a period marked by immense political turmoil, civil war, and external threats, a new kind of divine figure surged in popularity, offering a promise of order, victory, and eternal renewal. This was Sol Invictus, the unconquered sun. His image, a radiant, powerful figure often driving a celestial chariot, became a potent emblem not just in grand state art, but in the deeply personal realm of jewelry, appearing on rings, brooches, and pendants worn by those who believed in his mighty power. The rise of Sol Invictus is a fascinating story of religious and political strategy. Earlier sun gods had always been part of the Roman pantheon, but this particular incarnation was elevated to a position of supreme importance by emperors seeking to solidify their own fragile power. In a fractured empire, they needed a god who transcended local loyalties, a universal force that could symbolize the unity and indestructibility of the empire itself. Emperors like Aurelian made Sol Invictus the chief patron of the entire Roman state, building a magnificent temple in his honor and establishing official games in his name. To wear the symbol of this officially sanctioned, all-powerful deity was therefore a powerful declaration of loyalty to the state and the emperor, who served as his representative on earth. It was a political and religious statement worn on the body. The imagery itself was designed to convey specific, awe-inspiring qualities. Sol is almost always depicted with a radiant crown, beams of light emanating from his head. Sometimes he is shown holding a whip, driving his four-horse chariot across the sky. This was a symbol of unstoppable motion, of inevitable victory, and of the daily triumph of light over darkness. For a Roman wearing a ring engraved with this scene, it was a personal talisman for success. A soldier might wear it for victory in battle, a merchant for success in business, or a politician for triumph in the forum. It was a charm for invincibility, a daily reminder that just as the sun always rises, so too could their fortunes be renewed. This connection to cyclic renewal tied the sun god directly to concepts of eternity and the afterlife. The sun's daily journey, disappearing into the darkness of night, only to be reborn at dawn, made it a powerful symbol of resurrection and eternal life. This belief is beautifully illustrated in the artwork found in elaborate imperial mausoleums and tombs, where the sun god is frequently shown ascending towards the heavens. This symbolism was eagerly adopted for personal jewelry, particularly by those who were influenced by mystery cults and philosophical ideas about the soul's journey after death. A gold bracelet depicting Sol Invictus was more than a beautiful accessory. It was a hopeful prayer for salvation, a belief that the wearer's soul would, like the sun, overcome death and achieve a glorious afterlife. The artifacts that survive are stunning testaments to this devotion. We find bronze and silver fibulae, the brooches used to fasten cloaks, with finely worked sunburst designs at their center. But the most personal expressions are the rings. Intaglio rings feature detailed engravings of the radiant sun god, often with tiny, precise inscriptions circling the bezel. These inscriptions are crucial to understanding their personal meaning. Alongside images of Sol, we find phrases like Invictus, meaning unconquered, or Eternitas, meaning eternity. Some even bear the names of the owners, making the piece an utterly unique declaration of faith. One can easily imagine a high-ranking official pressing such a ring into a wax seal, stamping every document not just with his name, but with a symbol of his unwavering belief in the eternal, unconquered power that guided the empire and his own destiny. In a time of great uncertainty, these small, shining objects were a way to carry a piece of celestial certainty and order close at hand. Yet even as the cult of Sol Invictus promised celestial order and imperial unity, a profoundly different spiritual undercurrent was flowing through the empire, one that initially had to hide its beliefs in plain sight. In the shadows of the grand public temples, a new faith was taking root, and its followers, often facing suspicion and brutal persecution, developed a secret visual language to express their devotion. They began to incorporate subtle Christian symbols into their most personal possessions, their jewelry. These small, seemingly innocuous items became portable testaments of faith, hiding powerful meaning within designs that appeared decorative to the untrained eye. Among the most significant of these hidden symbols was the Chi-Rho. This monogram is formed by superimposing the first two letters of the Greek word for Christ, Christos. The Chi looks like our letter X, and the Rho looks like a P. When combined, they create a powerful and instantly recognizable symbol for believers, yet one that could be easily mistaken for a simple decorative mark or a stonemason's scratch by a Roman official. This symbol's transformative power is deeply tied to the Emperor Constantine and his legendary vision before the Battle of the Milvian Bridge. According to early Christian historians, Constantine saw the Chi-Rho in the sky with the words, "In hoc signo vinces, in this sign you will conquer." He adopted the symbol for his military standard and emerged victorious, an event that led to his eventual legalization of Christianity. For a Christian living both before and after this pivotal moment, wearing a ring engraved with the Chi-Rho was an act of immense faith. It was a declaration of belief in the power of Christ and a quiet participation in that triumphant narrative. It said, "I, too, conquer under this sign." Perhaps the most beautiful and widespread of these covert symbols was the fish, or ichthys. To any Roman, a fish might seem like a mundane motif, perhaps a fisherman's good luck charm or a simple decoration. But for a Christian, it held a deep, layered meaning. The Greek word for fish is ichtheta, sigma ichthys, and it served as a brilliant acrostic, Isus Christos Theou Sota, which translates to Jesus Christ, Son of God, Savior. This was a complete statement of core Christian belief, encoded into a single, everyday image. A ring featuring a fish, or two fish swimming together, was more than just jewelry. It was a secret creed worn on the hand. Its genius was in its perfect camouflage. In a busy marketplace or a public bath, one believer could subtly draw the arc of a fish in the dust with their foot. Another believer seeing it would recognize the symbol and know they were in the presence of a fellow Christian. This was a life-saving form of nonverbal communication, a way to identify safe houses and trusted communities under the very nose of a hostile government. The way these symbols were incorporated into jewelry is a testament to ancient ingenuity and caution. We find rings where the Chi-Rho is not the central feature, but is instead cleverly integrated into an otherwise pagan-looking design, perhaps hidden within the pattern of a leaf or the engraving on a seal stone. The fish might appear as a tiny, almost unnoticeable detail on the shoulder of a ring, or as one small charm among many on a bracelet that also featured harmless secular symbols. The goal was not to be overt, but to be recognizable only to those who knew what to look for. The materials were often humble, bronze, iron, or carved bone, reflecting the diverse social spectrum of early Christians and the need for inconspicuousness. The most poignant evidence of this practice comes from the Roman catacombs, the labyrinthine underground burial networks where Christians secretly gathered to worship and bury their dead. Here, archaeologists have unearthed rings and pendants still resting on the skeletons of their owners. To hold one of these rings is to feel a direct connection to an individual who risked everything for their faith. Each tiny fish, each discrete Chi-Rho, tells a story of courage and quiet conviction. It speaks of a community that, long before it could build grand basilicas, expressed its most profound hopes and identity through the most intimate of objects, turning personal adornment into a powerful language of hidden devotion and ultimate triumph. While the powerful imagery of Sol Invictus and the secret signs of early Christianity reveal a world of grand beliefs, Roman jewelry also spoke a more personal and immediate language through the animals that shared their world. Beyond the divine serpent and the imperial eagle, creatures like the lion and the dolphin were carved into brooches, rings, and earrings, each one a concise, wearable expression of a very human hope or trait. These were not just decorative choices. They were a form of non-verbal communication, a way for a person to tell the world something about their character, their profession, or their deepest desires without ever saying a word. Take the lion, for instance. Across countless cultures, this majestic predator has always symbolized raw power, courage, and supreme authority. For the Romans, this symbolism was amplified by its connection to Hercules and his legendary first labor, the slaying of the Nemean lion. By wearing a lion's image, perhaps a fierce-looking lion head ring, or a brooch depicting a full-bodied lion in mid-roar, an individual was consciously aligning themselves with the demigod's heroic strength and fearlessness. This was a symbol particularly favored by soldiers and military commanders. A centurion might have worn a lion insignia on his belt buckle, or a ring as a personal talisman for bravery in the chaos of battle. A constant reminder to embody the animal's ferocity and command. But its appeal wasn't limited to the battlefield. For a statesman or an orator in the Roman Forum, the lion represented moral courage and the authority of his voice. Wearing it was a declaration of intent. He would speak with power and defend his positions without fear. The lion motif told everyone who saw it that the wearer was a person of immense strength, both physical and moral, someone not to be trifled with. In stark contrast to the lion's terrestrial ferocity, the dolphin represented something entirely different: guidance, salvation, and the joyous, safe return from a journey. This positive symbolism stemmed directly from well-known Greek and Roman myths, where dolphins were portrayed as benevolent, intelligent helpers of mankind. There's the famous story of the poet Arion, who was saved from drowning by a mesmerized dolphin that carried him safely to shore after he leapt from a ship to escape pirates. Another myth tells of Dionysus, the god of wine, who was captured by sailors. He caused vines to grow all over the ship and summoned dolphins to transport him safely away, afterwards placing the dolphin among the stars as the constellation Delphinus. These stories cemented the dolphin's role as a protector of sailors and a guardian of safe passage across the unpredictable and often deadly Mediterranean Sea. Because of this, dolphin motifs became incredibly popular in jewelry, especially for those whose lives were tied to the water. A merchant about to embark on a trading voyage might receive a gift from his family: a bronze brooch fashioned into a leaping dolphin to pin his cloak. This was a practical, wearable prayer for his safe return. We have archaeological evidence of beautiful gold earrings shaped like dolphins, their bodies curved into elegant arcs, which would have swung with every step the wearer took. For a fisherman's wife or a merchant's daughter, wearing such earrings was a way to keep a constant, hopeful thought for their loved one's safety at sea. The dolphin's association with playfulness and friendship also made it a charming symbol for general good luck and happy travels, a light-hearted counterpoint to the more serious and protective amulets like the Fascinus. These animal symbols were a versatile and deeply personal language. A politician might choose a lion to broadcast his authority, while a sailor's family might choose a dolphin to whisper a prayer for his safety. The beauty of this system was its clarity and its subtlety. In the bustling crowds of a Roman city, a quick glance at a person's jewelry could tell you a story about who they were, what they did, and what they valued most. These small, beautifully crafted creatures are a powerful reminder that for the Romans, the natural world was not separate from the human one. It was a rich source of symbolism, a wellspring of stories, and a means of expressing the most fundamental human hopes and fears through the art they wore on their bodies every single day. Beyond the abstract symbols of knots and celestial bodies, the most direct way a Roman could carry their faith with them was to literally wear the image of their chosen deity. Jewelry featuring exquisitely carved miniatures of gods and goddesses was a profound expression of personalized devotion, a way to keep a divine protector close to the skin and to publicly declare one's allegiance to a particular power. This wasn't a generic declaration of piety. It was a targeted spiritual request. A woman hoping for love or a happy marriage might wear a pendant bearing the image of Venus, the goddess of love and beauty. A soldier marching off to the Germanic frontier would have a ring engraved with a fierce, armored Mars, god of war, as a plea for courage and victory. Each piece was a wearable prayer, a constant, tangible connection to the divine forces that governed every aspect of Roman life. The craftsmanship invested in these tiny masterpieces is staggering. The most common form was the intaglio ring. Artisans would meticulously carve a negative image, a deep, precise engraving, into a semi-precious stone like carnelian, jasper, or onyx. This carved stone would then be set into a gold or silver bezel. When the ring was pressed into warm wax to seal a document, it would leave behind a raised, positive image of the god, a perfect miniature signature protected by that very deity. But the artistry wasn't just for seals. We find gorgeous pendants where the god is depicted in high relief, hammered and sculpted from a sheet of gold. Think of a pendant of Apollo, the god of the sun and music, with his lyre perfectly detailed and his features sharp and noble, all on a disc smaller than a coin. Others might feature a delicate profile of Diana the huntress, her hair pulled back, a tiny quiver of arrows visible over her shoulder. The level of detail achieved on such a small scale is a testament to the skill of Roman jewelers and the immense importance these objects held for their owners. This practice of wearing divine images was deeply intertwined with the Roman concept of votive offerings. In temples, worshippers would often leave small, cheap terracotta or lead figurines of a god's limbs or organs they wished to be healed, or of the god itself as a thank you for an answered prayer. A gold pendant of Mercury, the god of commerce, was a far more permanent and personal version of this. A successful merchant might commission such a piece after a particularly profitable year as a permanent thank offering to the god, one that he could wear every day as a mark of gratitude and a charm for continued success. It transformed a one-time temple offering into a lifelong partnership. The jewelry became a testament to a fulfilled vow, a story of divine favor worn proudly on the body for all to see. Ultimately, this jewelry was a powerful reflector of social and personal identity. The specific god you chose to wear spoke volumes about who you were, what you did, and what you valued most. A farmer might favor a ring depicting Ceres, goddess of the harvest, with sheaves of wheat at her feet. A statesman or orator might choose a brooch showing Mercury, patron of eloquence and communication, to help him sway the Senate. A mother might wear a pendant of Juno, the protector of women and childbirth. These choices were deeply personal, but they were also public. In a society where religion was woven into the fabric of the state, displaying the image of a major deity was a sign of good citizenship and traditional values. However, the choice of a less common deity, or one associated with foreign mystery cults, could be a more subtle, avant-garde statement. The jewelry case becomes a window into the wearer's soul, revealing not just their hopes and fears, but their profession, their social standing, and their very place within the vast and complex spiritual landscape of the Roman world. But if a lion represented courage and a dolphin promised safe passage, perhaps the most terrifyingly effective protective symbol of all was the face of a monster, the Gorgoneion. This is the term for the disembodied head of the Gorgon Medusa, a fearsome image with wide, staring eyes, a lolling tongue, and a wild mane of writhing snakes. Our modern sensibility might see this as a thing of nightmares, but to a Roman, this horrifying visage was one of the most powerful and sought-after guardians one could carry. The principle behind it was brilliantly straightforward. To fight a monster, you use a monster. The absolute terror embodied in Medusa's face was so potent that it was believed to petrify evil itself, creating a kind of supernatural shield around the wearer that could deflect malice, envy, and misfortune before they could even strike. To understand the power of this amulet, we have to go back to the source of the fear, the original Greek myth that the Romans adopted as their own. Medusa was once a beautiful maiden, but she was cursed by the goddess Athena after an encounter with Poseidon in Athena's temple. Her lovely hair was transformed into a mass of hissing serpents, and her face became so horrifying that any living creature who met her gaze would instantly turn to stone. She was eventually slain by the hero Perseus, who used a polished shield as a mirror to avoid looking at her directly, and decapitated her while she slept. But even in death, her head retained its petrifying power. Perseus used it as the ultimate weapon, defeating his enemies by simply unveiling it and turning them to stone. This myth provided the perfect magical logic for an amulet. The severed head still had power, and by carrying its image, you were harnessing that same power for your own defense. You were, in effect, turning the Gorgon's deadly gaze outward against any and all threats. Roman jewelers and gem cutters became masters at capturing this terrifying essence in miniature. The most common form was the intaglio ring. A skilled artisan would take a dark stone like hematite or jet and carve the grotesque features of Medusa in deep, sharp detail. The wide, bulging eyes were designed to stare directly outward, confronting any evil that approached. The mouth was often agape, with a sharp canine tooth visible and the tongue protruding, a classic ancient gesture meant to ward off evil. And most importantly, the snakes, each one carefully carved, coiled through her hair, their own tiny heads sometimes rearing up as if to strike. The choice of a dark stone was itself significant. Darker materials were traditionally associated with chthonic, or underworld, powers, adding another layer of protective magic to the object. These rings were not just decorative, they were functional magical tools. When pressed into wax to seal a document, the resulting impression would be a raised image of the Gorgon, stamping the seal itself with a protective charm. We also find stunning examples of Gorgoneion crafted in precious metals. Imagine a golden pendant, worn on a chain around the neck. The face of Medusa is not gently modeled, but is instead rendered in repoussé, hammered from the reverse to create a high relief, almost three-dimensional image that would have caught the light and cast dramatic shadows, making the features seem alive and watchful. Some of the most powerful surviving examples are phalleri large, decorative discs that were awards for military valor, worn on a soldier's ceremonial harness. To have a Gorgoneion staring out from the center of your chest plate was a declaration that you were under the protection of the most potent apotropaic symbol available. It's no surprise, then, that these amulets were overwhelmingly popular with two groups of people who faced constant, unpredictable danger: soldiers and travelers. A legionary marching through hostile territory would pin a Gorgoneion brooch to his cloak, or wear the ring to turn away the weapons and ill will of his enemies. For a traveler, whether a merchant crossing the sea or a citizen simply journeying to the next town, the world was full of unseen perils, bandits, bad weather, and spirits that haunted the crossroads. Wearing the Gorgon's head was like carrying a personal, supernatural guard. Archaeological evidence supports this widespread use. Excavations at Roman forts, along Hadrian's Wall, for instance, have turned up numerous Gorgoneion rings and brooch fragments, often found in the barracks or workshop areas. These finds tell a silent but vivid story of young men far from home, seeking comfort and security in the terrifying face of a monster, believing deeply that the very thing that could kill could also, paradoxically, save. This practice of turning currency into personal adornment offers perhaps the most direct and fascinating example of wearable propaganda. Imagine a Roman citizen not just spending a coin, but wearing one set prominently in a gold frame around their neck. This was coin jewelry, and it was a brilliant fusion of conspicuous wealth, personal faith, and overt political messaging. In a world without mass media, wearing the portrait of the emperor was a powerful public declaration of loyalty. It signaled that you were a supporter of the current regime, a participant in the system, and a beneficiary of the peace and prosperity, the Pax Romana, that the emperor was supposed to guarantee. It was a statement that you were on the right side of power. The most common form this took was the coin necklace. A single high-value gold coin, such as an aureus, would be carefully mounted in a decorative gold bezel, often with a loop soldered directly to the coin's edge, or by creating a frame that gripped the coin's rim. This bezel could be simple or ornately worked, with fine filigree and granulation, but its purpose was always to highlight and protect the coin itself. These pieces were worn by both men and women of the elite classes. For a man, it might hang from a sturdy chain, visible against his tunic. For a woman, it could be part of a more elaborate assemblage of pendants on a chain, mingling with other precious stones and amulets. The coin chosen was never random. It was almost always a current or recent issue, featuring the portrait of the reigning emperor or a deified predecessor. Wearing the freshly minted, sternly handsome face of a new emperor like Augustus or Trajan was a clear sign of support for his administration and his vision for Rome. It was the ancient equivalent of wearing a campaign button, but one crafted from solid gold. But the message was even more nuanced than simple allegiance. The reverse side of the coin was just as important as the portrait on the front. Roman coins were miniature billboards, and their reverses were covered in sophisticated political propaganda. An emperor might mint a coin depicting a confident goddess like Securitas, representing the security he brought to the empire, or Abundantia, a goddess holding a cornucopia to symbolize the prosperity of his reign. Another might show a captured enemy soldier kneeling in submission, a bold claim of military victory and expanded borders. By setting this coin into jewelry, the wearer wasn't just endorsing the emperor's face, they were endorsing his entire political platform. They were buying into the narrative of victory, peace, and abundance that the imperial mint was selling. A necklace featuring such a coin told everyone who saw it that the wearer was not only wealthy and loyal, but also politically savvy, someone who understood and supported the state's official message. The value of these pieces was both intrinsic and symbolic. The coin itself was literally money. A gold aureus contained a significant amount of precious metal and represented substantial monetary value. By mounting it in jewelry, the owner was effectively taking that currency out of circulation, turning liquid wealth into a permanent, wearable asset. This was a blatant display of financial power. It said, "I am so wealthy that I can afford to turn my spending money into decoration." In times of economic uncertainty, or during the reigns of less trusted emperors whose coinage might be debased with less precious metal, wearing an older coin from a prosperous era, like that of the revered Emperor Augustus, made an additional statement. It signaled a preference for the good old days of sound money and stable leadership, a subtle critique of the present, wrapped in the guise of nostalgia. Beyond necklaces, coins were set into a variety of other jewelry items. Bracelets were created with multiple gold bezels, each holding a smaller silver denarius, creating a shimmering, jangling display of wealth and loyalty along the wrist. Rings were also popular, though mounting a coin in a ring presented a challenge due to wear and tear on the raised design. Some rings featured a miniature version of a coin, while others used a carved gemstone that replicated a famous coin type. The archaeological record provides stunning evidence of this practice. The Hoxne Hoard, a magnificent treasure discovered in Britain, contained several gold necklaces where beautiful gold solidia 4th century emperors were set as pendants. Finding these exquisite pieces, carefully buried alongside other treasure, speaks to their immense personal and monetary value to their owners, who clearly hoped to retrieve them one day. Each one is a frozen moment in time, a personal choice to align one's identity with the power and prestige of Rome, making a political statement that was as solid and enduring as the gold from which it was made. Amidst the powerful imagery of gods and monsters, the most direct and personal form of magical practice involved words themselves. Romans truly believed that language held a creative, tangible power, and they harnessed this power by literally binding spells into their jewelry. This goes far beyond a symbol. This is about inscribing the very words of a ritual onto a tiny metal sheet or a precious stone, transforming a simple ring or pendant into a concentrated vessel of supernatural energy. These objects were not just worn for show. They were functional tools in a daily spiritual practice, activated by the potent combination of specific materials, sacred words, and unwavering belief. The foundation of this practice was the magical gemstone. Certain stones were believed to possess innate properties, and a skilled artisan or magician would enhance this natural power by carving them with precise images and words. Agate, for instance, was highly prized for its perceived ability to grant strength and victory. A wrestler or a soldier might carry an agate stone carved with an image of Hercules, not just as a representation, but as a direct infusion of the demigod's power into the stone's inherent strength-giving property. Similarly, deep red coral was not merely a colorful material. It was thought to be a powerful safeguard against the evil eye and all forms of dark magic. A coral amulet, especially for a child, was considered one of the most effective shields, its vibrant red color itself acting as a deterrent to malicious forces. The material and the magic were inseparable. To unlock a gem's full potential, however, required inscription. This is where we move into the realm of true spell casting. The most fascinating sources we have for these practices are ancient handbooks of magic, like the famous Greek magical papyri, a collection of spells from Roman Egypt that provides a direct window into this hidden world. These texts provide actual recipes for creating powerful amulets. A typical entry might instruct a magician to take a specific stone, like a green jasper, and at a specific astrological hour, carve a very particular series of words and symbols onto it. The inscriptions were often a bewildering mixture of divine names, vocalizations thought to be the language of the gods, and strange, powerful-looking characters known as characteras, geometric shapes and symbols that were believed to hold immense power in their very form. One common and powerful type of inscription was the voces magicae, the magical words. These were often strings of vowels, like I-O circumflex, which were considered the pure elemental sounds of the cosmos, or long palindromic phrases like Ablanatha and Alba, meant to create a perfect, unbreakable circuit of power. To wear a ring inscribed with these words was to wear a permanent, silent incantation. Imagine a woman suffering from a fever. She might commission a magician to create a bronze amulet for her. Following a recipe from a text like the papyri, he would engrave it with a spell that directly addressed the personified spirit of the fever. Flee, hated fever. Phobos Apollo pursues you. Stop the fever in the marrow of so and so. The blank would be filled with the woman's name, making the spell intensely personal. She would then wear this amulet, believing the words themselves would act as a command, driving the illness from her body. The role these objects played in daily Roman life cannot be overstated. In a world where a sudden illness, a business failure, or a romantic rejection could easily be attributed to a spell cast by an enemy or the caprice of a demon, carrying your own counter-magic was a rational act of self-defense. A merchant might wear a silver lamella, a thin sheet of metal rolled up in a pendant, its surface covered in a spell to attract customers and ensure profitable deals. A young man obsessed with a woman might wear a ring inscribed with a forceful binding spell intended to draw her to him. A practice so common that laws were eventually passed against it. These were not the actions of a fringe few. They were part of the mainstream fabric of Roman spirituality, a deeply ingrained superstitious mindset that sought to control the unpredictable forces of life through any means available, especially the potent, wearable magic of inscribed words. While fierce protective amulets and powerful political statements were common, the most tender and hopeful symbols in Roman jewelry were reserved for the promise of marriage. In a society where marriages were often arranged for social or economic advantage, jewelry provided a rare and beautiful space for expressing genuine affection, commitment, and the profound hope for a lifelong partnership. The quintessential symbol of this bond was the dextrum iunctio, the joining of right hands. This was far more than a simple handshake. It was the central act of the Roman wedding ceremony itself, a legal and spiritual gesture that formally sealed the marriage contract. The moment the bride and groom clasped their right hands in front of witnesses, they were irrevocably bound together. This powerful ritual gesture was immortalized in the most personal piece of jewelry a Roman would ever own, the marriage ring. Many gold bands from the imperial period feature a finely engraved depiction of this very scene right on the bezel. You can see two hands, one clearly masculine and the other feminine, clasped firmly together. Sometimes these rings are strikingly simple, just the two hands alone, but often the design is enriched with additional layers of meaning. Some show the hands holding a small, intricate object between them, like a set of scales. This symbolized the balance and fairness that should exist in their partnership, a hope for equity and mutual respect. Others might show the hands cradling a tiny poppy pod or an ear of wheat, ancient symbols of fertility and abundance, a direct prayer for children and a prosperous household. The genius of this design was its clarity. Even without a single written word, the message of union, balance, and shared future was instantly understood by anyone who saw it. But words, too, played a crucial role. The inside of these rings, the part that would sit against the skin, was the perfect place for a secret, intimate message. Engraved in delicate letters, we find phrases that speak directly across the centuries. One common inscription was Pignus Amoris, which translates to a pledge of love. Another was Vivas in Dio, meaning may you live in God, a wish for divine blessing on the marriage. These were not generic well wishes. They were personal vows worn against the finger, a constant, private reminder of the promise made on the wedding day. The act of inscribing the ring transformed it from a mere symbol into an active participant in the marriage, a tangible token of the bond. Beyond the ring, other pieces of jewelry marked the stages of betrothal and marriage. Before the wedding, a formal engagement ceremony known as the sponsalia would take place. Here, the groom would present his intended bride with a gift, often a gold ring. This betrothal ring was distinct from the simpler iron ring Romans wore in public life, and served as a public announcement of the impending union. The wedding day itself was a cascade of symbolic acts, each with its own associated adornment. The bride's hair was parted with a specially consecrated iron spearhead, a ritual that harkened back to Rome's earliest days and was believed to ensure fertility. She was then veiled with a flame-colored veil called the flammeum, and her tunic was fastened with the symbolic Hercules knot, which only the groom would later untie. Roman literature gives us poignant glimpses into the deep emotions these customs represented. The poet Catullus, in his famous poem about the marriage of Thetis and Peleus, describes the wedding guests arriving and the bride herself, painting a picture of celebration and hope. While fictional, it reflects the idealized joy of the occasion. Even more touching are the personal sentiments found in letters and inscriptions on tombs. A grieving husband might commission a tombstone for his wife of decades, carving upon it the image of the dexterum iunctio to show that their bond, sealed with a handclasp and a ring, was one that not even death could truly break. These artifacts and stories reveal that beneath the practicalities of Roman marriage lay a genuine desire for companionship, love, and a union that was both legally binding and emotionally fulfilling. The jewelry they exchanged was the physical proof of that desire, a small, precious object that carried the immense weight of a shared life yet to come. While rings bearing clasped hands and amulets carved with powerful symbols conveyed clear, singular messages, the Roman elite often sought to display a far more sophisticated form of literacy and wealth through their jewelry. They commissioned pieces that didn't just show a symbol, but told an entire story. These were intricate, miniature masterpieces depicting full mythological scenes, wearable art that transformed the wearer into a walking gallery of culture and divine narrative. Imagine a heavy gold ring, its large, flat bezel not set with a gem, but instead engraved with a breathtakingly detailed scene from Virgil's Aeneid. There's Aeneas himself, fleeing the burning city of Troy, his aged father Anchises slung over his shoulder, the tiny flames of the city etched behind them with astonishing precision. This was more than decoration, it was a declaration. By wearing such a scene, the owner was instantly identified as a person of immense education, wealth, and refined taste. Someone who could not only afford such a luxury, but also fully understand and appreciate the complex story it represented. The primary canvas for these narratives was the intaglio ring. Highly skilled gem cutters, using simple bow drills and abrasives, would carve these epic tales into precious stones like sardonyx, carnelian, or amethyst. The level of detail they achieved is nothing short of miraculous. On a surface often smaller than a thumbnail, they could depict multiple figures in action, architectural elements, and even subtle emotional expressions. A popular scene was the discovery of the twins, Romulus and Remus, by the shepherd Faustulus, with the she-wolf bending down to nurse them, and the Tiber River swirling in the background. Another favorite was the hero Perseus, holding the severed head of Medusa while carefully balancing on one foot to avoid looking at her reflection in his shield. These weren't generic images. They were frozen moments from the most cherished stories of Roman identity. Stories that every educated aristocrat would know by heart. Owning and wearing such a ring was like carrying a piece of the nation's founding myth on your finger. The social function of this jewelry was brilliantly multifaceted. In the highly performative world of the Roman elite, every object was a tool for communication. A ring depicting a scene from Homer or Ovid was an instant conversation starter at a dinner party or in the forum. It invited commentary and discussion, allowing the wearer to demonstrate their knowledge of literature and philosophy, to engage in a witty debate about the moral of the story, or to draw a clever parallel between the myth and current political events. It was a non-verbal cue that said, "I am cultured, I am learned, engage with me on that level. Furthermore, the specific myth chosen could send a very targeted message. A senator known for his piety might wear a ring showing Aeneas, the famously pious founder of Rome, as a subtle endorsement of his own character. A general might choose a scene of Achilles victorious in battle. The jewelry became a curated part of their public persona. The creation of these pieces was an endeavor only the wealthiest could afford. The stones themselves were valuable imports from the edges of the empire, and the craftsmen capable of such fine work were among the most highly paid artists in the Roman world. We have evidence from archaeological finds, like those from the lavish villas buried by Vesuvius, that such narrative jewelry was a hallmark of the highest social circles. It's easy to imagine a wealthy patrician woman, adorned in the finest silk stola, extending her hand to greet a guest, the intricate gold and carved gemstone on her finger sparkling in the lamplight, and immediately capturing the attention of everyone in the room. The guest, recognizing the scene, might compliment her taste and launch into a discussion of the myth, a social dance facilitated by the art she wore. These objects were the ultimate flex, a seamless blend of obscene wealth, deep education, and artistic patronage, all condensed into a single, beautiful piece of personal adornment that spoke volumes without saying a word. But while a senator in Rome might wear a ring depicting the founding myth of Romulus and Remus, a wealthy woman in the Egyptian city of Alexandria would have made a very different choice for her adornments. The Roman Empire was a colossal patchwork of cultures, languages, and ancient traditions, and the jewelry its citizens wore reflected this stunning diversity. To assume a single, uniform Roman style from Britain to Syria is to miss one of the most fascinating aspects of their civilization: their remarkable ability to absorb, adapt, and blend local customs with their own. When we examine jewelry from the provinces, we see not a bland imperial copy, but a vibrant conversation, a fusion of Roman authority with deeply rooted local identity, all expressed through the symbols crafted into gold and silver. Consider the great metropolis of Alexandria in the province of Egypt. Here, Greek, Egyptian, and Roman cultures had been intermingling for centuries. A wealthy Alexandrian woman's jewelry box would have been a treasure trove of this fusion. She might own a stunning gold necklace featuring the head of Serapis, a god literally invented to bridge Greek and Egyptian beliefs, combining the attributes of Osiris and Apis with the bearded visage of Zeus. Her bracelets might feature the iconic wedgeat, or eye of Horus, a classic Egyptian symbol of protection and good health, but crafted using Roman techniques like fine gold filigree and granulation. Perhaps most tellingly, we find numerous examples of mummy portraits from Roman Egypt, those breathtakingly realistic paintings placed over the faces of the deceased. In these portraits, the subjects are often depicted wearing the latest Roman-style gold earrings and necklaces, yet their traditional Egyptian gold wreaths rest upon their heads. They are buried according to ancient Egyptian rites, yet they present themselves to the gods in the fashionable Roman jewelry of their time. This is not a people who had their identity erased. It is a people who proudly held onto their core beliefs, while fully participating in the visual language of the empire. They were both Egyptian and Roman, and their jewelry declares this dual citizenship with every exquisite detail. Journey northwest to the distant frontier province of Britannia, and the cultural blend takes on a completely different character. Here, the Roman legions and administrators encountered the complex and sophisticated art of the Celtic tribes. Celtic metalwork was world-renowned for its abstract, swirling patterns, its intricate trumpet's curves, and its fascination with natural forms like boars and horses. Rather than suppress this artistic tradition, local craftsmen and Roman settlers began to incorporate it. A bronze brooch, a type essential for fastening a cloak in the chilly British climate, might have the classic Roman shape of a bow brooch, but its surface would be decorated with beautiful enamel work in brilliant reds and blues, arranged in the distinct Celtic spiral pattern. We find rings where the bezel is carved with the image of a goddess, but she isn't Venus or Minerva. She is a local deity like Sulis, the powerful Celtic spirit of the hot springs at Bath, whom the Romans seamlessly equated with their own goddess Minerva, creating Sulis Minerva. A pendant found in Britain might depict a horse, an animal sacred to the Celtic sun god and a symbol of sovereignty, but it is crafted from Roman silver and worn on a chain made with Roman techniques. This jewelry tells a story of negotiation and practicality. The people of Roman Britain adopted the types of objects the Romans used, but they often infused them with the symbols that had protected and defined their ancestors for generations, creating a powerful new hybrid style that was uniquely British Roman. This phenomenon of localized deities is one of the clearest windows into how the empire functioned. The Roman state was brilliantly pragmatic in matters of religion. They rarely demanded that conquered people abandon their gods. Instead, they practiced interpretatio Romana, the Roman interpretation, where they would identify a local god with a Roman counterpart based on their shared attributes. This allowed for a seamless merging of cults. In Roman Gaul, the beloved hammer god Sucellus was often depicted alongside the Roman goddess of prosperity, Abundantia. In North Africa, the powerful sky god Bol Hammon was syncretized with Saturn. For the individual worshipper, this meant their devotional jewelry could be deeply personal. A Gaulish artisan might wear an amulet ring featuring his local protector god, but that god might now hold a Roman attribute, and the ring's style would be unmistakably Roman. This was a two-way street. Just as local populations incorporated Roman elements, Roman soldiers stationed in these far-flung provinces often adopted local gods for their protection, sending home jewelry that must have seemed strange and exotic to their families in Italy. A legionary on the Germanic frontier might commission a votive pendant for the matrony, the mysterious mother goddesses revered in that region, hoping for their favor in a harsh and unfamiliar land. What these regional variations reveal is that Roman identity was often a layer, not a replacement. Being Roman didn't mean erasing who you were. It could mean adding a new, powerful dimension to your existing identity. The empire was a vast network, and wearing a piece of jewelry that combined Roman form with local symbolism was a way to display your place within that network. It showed you were connected to the broader economic and cultural systems of Rome, able to acquire Roman materials and styles, while still maintaining your unique cultural heritage. This astonishing flexibility is a key reason for the empire's longevity. By allowing and even encouraging this kind of cultural fusion, Rome gave people a stake in the system. Their jewelry becomes a map, not just of conquest, but of conversation, showing us how 1,000 different local voices chose to speak, and how they chose to adorn themselves within the vast and echoing chorus of the Roman world. Of course, the materials themselves were a language. While we marvel at the gleaming gold and polished silver in museum cases, to a Roman, the choice of material was the first and most crucial word in the symbolic sentence. A piece of jewelry spoke. Gold was not just expensive. It was solar, eternal, and divine. Its incorruptible nature linking it directly to the immortal gods and the power of the sun. Silver, associated with the moon and the goddess Diana, carried connotations of purity, clarity, and cool reflection. But the Roman world was vast, and its jewelry box was filled with materials that whispered of distant lands, deep magic, and powerful superstitions far beyond mere monetary value. Consider the deep summer black of jet. This fossilized wood, often washed ashore in Britain, was not chosen for a festive occasion. It was the material of mourning. Its dark, matte finish and lightweight nature made it the primary component for jewelry worn during periods of grief and for funerary rites. A jet pendant, bracelet, or hairpin was a public signal of loss, a respectful acknowledgement of a journey into the afterlife. But its purpose was not purely symbolic. Jet was also believed to possess potent apotropaic qualities, especially in the context of death, which was fraught with spiritual danger. It was thought to ward off the malevolent spirits that could be attracted by the vulnerable state of the deceased and their grieving family. Wearing jet was a way to protect oneself during this liminal, hazardous time, making it a material that blended social custom with deep-seated magical belief. On the opposite end of the spectrum glows warm, captured sunlight. Amber, this fossilized resin, traveling all the way from the Baltic coast along treacherous trade routes, was revered long before Rome was founded. Its ability to become electrically charged when rubbed, creating a pull on bits of straw, was seen as clear evidence of its latent life force and magical vitality. To the Romans, amber or succinum was a powerful amulet against witchcraft, sickness, and all manner of evil. It was particularly favored for children, with amber beads and pendants found in the graves of infants and young girls, believed to protect their fragile health and ward off the evil eye. The material's organic warmth and translucent beauty made it a popular choice for intricate carvings of protective deities and animals, turning a scientific curiosity into a sacred, wearable shield. Then there was the mysterious allure of Egyptian porphyry and obsidian. These stones, one a deep imperial purple and the other a volcanic glass of pure, reflective black, were less common in everyday jewelry but heavy with meaning. Porphyry's unique color, quarried from a single source in Egypt, made it inextricably linked to imperial power. Its use was often restricted to objects associated with the emperor and the very highest echelons of society. A ring featuring a porphyry intaglio would have been an astounding declaration of one's proximity to the throne. Obsidian, with its flawless, mirror-like surface, was believed to have the power to reveal the future. Scryers would gaze into polished obsidian balls to see visions, and small obsidian discs set into rings or pendants were thought to help the wearer perceive hidden truths and see through deception. It was the stone of prophets and oracles, its impenetrable darkness believed to be a window to other realms. The craftsmanship behind these pieces reveals a staggering level of artistry and technical skill. Goldsmiths employed techniques like filigree, twisting minute threads of gold into delicate lace-like patterns, and granulation, fusing tiny gold beads onto a surface to create intricate textures and images. Gem engraving was a specialist art form. Using a bow drill tipped with a diamond point and abrasives like powdered corundum, an artisan would patiently carve intricate designs into the hardest of stones to create intaglio seals. The creation of cameos where a layered stone like sardonyx was carved to leave a raised, light-colored image against a dark background represented the absolute pinnacle of the craft. These pieces were not merely made, they were engineered for symbolism. A cameo could show a portrait of the emperor in pristine white against a dark field, a visual metaphor for his divine light shining against the darkness of chaos. The choice of material, the skill of the craftsman, and the intended message were all perfectly fused into one wearable masterpiece. Yet this dazzling world of imperial cameos and gold serpent bracelets represents only one side of the story. For every intricate gold ring depicting a myth, there were thousands of Romans who could never hope to own such a treasure. The language of symbols was spoken by all levels of society, but the dialect changed dramatically depending on one's wealth. The type of jewelry you wore, the materials it was made from, and the complexity of its symbols were instant, unspoken indicators of your place in the rigid Roman social hierarchy. While the elite used jewelry to broadcast their education, power, and divine connections, the common citizen relied on the same symbolic language for a more immediate and desperate need: accessible protection in a dangerous world. For the vast majority of Romans, the farmers, soldiers, freedmen, and shopkeepers' precious metals were a distant dream. Their lives were filled with tangible risks: illness, bad harvests, the dangers of childbirth, and the evil eye from a jealous neighbor. Their need for symbolic protection was arguably even greater than that of the insulated elite. But their solutions had to be crafted from what was readily available and affordable. Instead of gold, they turned to materials like bone, bronze, cheap glass, and even colored pottery. A common fisherman might carry a simple amulet carved from a piece of bone into the shape of a dolphin, a humble plea to Neptune for a safe return and a full net. A new mother, unable to afford a golden lunula, might instead weave a few beads of amber, believed to ward off illness, onto a leather cord for her baby. These objects were no less powerful in the minds of their owners. The meaning was everything, the material was simply the vessel. The contrast in craftsmanship reveals this divide most starkly. An elite senator's signet ring would be a masterpiece of the gem cutter's art. A flawless carnelian or onyx intaglio, perfectly carved with a detailed family emblem or a scene from Homer, set in a heavy gold bezel. This ring was both a functional seal for authenticating documents and a bold declaration of status. Conversely, a common soldier's ring might be a simple piece of iron or bronze, its bezel crudely stamped with a protective symbol like a phallus or an eye. The stamping process allowed for mass production, making these potent symbols available for just a few coins. The message was identical: protect me. But the execution shouted the difference in class. One was a custom-tailored suit of armor, the other was a standard-issue shield, but both were equally vital to their wearers. This dichotomy extends to the very symbols chosen. The elite often favored complex narratives that required a specific literary education to decipher. A ring showing Odysseus tied to the mast of his ship, listening to the sirens, was a symbol of wisdom and self-control. But you needed to know the story to understand it. For the common person, symbolism was immediate, direct, and visceral. A simple phallus amulet made of bronze needed no explanation. Its power to avert evil was universally understood. A glass bead with a swirling eye pattern was a straightforward defense against the evil eye. The accessibility of the symbol was key. A merchant didn't need to be literate to know that a carved image of Mercury, the god of trade, on his shop sign, or on a cheap pendant around his neck, would invite good fortune. What this tells us about Roman society is that the desire for protection and the belief in symbolic power were truly universal, acting as a great social leveler. From the emperor in his palace to the slave in the fields, everyone feared malice and misfortune. However, the expression of this belief meticulously reinforced the social order. The wealthy could afford to turn their anxieties into art, layering personal, political, and spiritual messages into lavish displays of craftsmanship. The poor had to rely on the symbolic equivalent of fast food, effective, mass-produced, and focused purely on core functionality. The materials and styles created a visible map of the social world, ensuring that even in shared superstition, everyone knew their place. A person's economic reality dictated not if they could participate in this world of hidden meanings, but how eloquently they could speak its language. These stunning artifacts we've explored didn't just appear in museum cases. They were lost to time, buried by catastrophe, hidden in haste, or laid to rest with their owners, waiting centuries for the careful hands of archaeologists to bring their stories back into the light. It is through these incredible discoveries that the silent language of Roman jewelry truly begins to speak to us, and few finds are more eloquent or breathtaking than the Hoxne Hoard. Unearthed in 1992 in Suffolk, England, by a metal detectorist named Eric Laws, this wasn't just a collection of old coins. It was the accumulated, panic-hidden wealth of a wealthy Roman family, likely buried during the tumultuous and dangerous period of the early 5th century, as the Roman administration in Britain collapsed. The hoard contained over 15,000 gold and silver coins, but its real treasure for our story lies in the jewelry. Exquisite gold bracelets, necklaces, and over 70 beautifully crafted rings, many of which were still stored inside their original silver jewelry chest. What makes the Hoxne Hoard so revealing is the intimate snapshot it provides. This is not a random assortment. It is a curated collection of someone's most valued possessions, a family's portable wealth and identity solidified in metal. Among these rings, we find the full spectrum of symbolic meaning we've discussed. There are rings set with coins of emperors, wearable declarations of loyalty to a fading Roman power. There are rings featuring Christian symbols like the Chi-Rho, showcasing the rise of the new faith among the elite. And there are rings with intricate engraved gemstones depicting protective deities and mythological scenes. The owner of this treasure wasn't just wealthy. They were communicating their status, their faith, and their hopes for protection through every piece they owned. The fact that it was all buried together, never reclaimed, adds a layer of poignant tragedy. These symbols of power and divine favor were ultimately powerless against the overwhelming tide of history. But their preservation gives us an unparalleled window into the final days of Roman Britain. For a completely different kind of preservation, we travel to the tragic city of Pompeii. Frozen in time by the eruption of Mount Vesuvius in 79 AD. Here, archaeology doesn't just give us objects, it gives us moments. The cavities left in the volcanic ash by decomposed bodies allowed archaeologists to create plaster casts, capturing the final heart-wrenching poses of the victims. And in these casts, we see jewelry being worn in life's last seconds. A woman is found clutching her precious jewels, a poignant attempt to save her most valued possessions. A child's skeletal remains reveal a simple protective amulet still around their neck. In the House of the Golden Bracelet, excavators discover the remains of a woman wearing a stunning gold bracelet shaped as a coiled serpent, its gemstone eyes still gleaming. This wasn't a piece stored away for safekeeping. It was on her person, a daily worn amulet for health and protection that she carried with her until the very end. Pompeii provides the undeniable context that jewelry wasn't just for show. It was an integral, functional part of daily life and identity, worn through both mundane moments and ultimate catastrophe. But how do we decode the more subtle secrets, the ones not written in obvious imagery? This is where modern science steps in to act as our translator. Many of the most powerful magical amulets, the lameli, were made of thin, fragile sheets of silver or gold, inscribed with spells and then rolled up tightly, placed in a pendant, and worn on the body. Over centuries, these rolls become fused together, far too delicate to unravel physically without destroying them. Today, advanced imaging techniques like computed tomography scanning, the same technology used in medical CT scans, allow us to virtually unroll these precious scrolls without ever touching them. Scientists can create a three-dimensional digital model and then flatten it out, revealing the ancient Greek or Latin incantations etched inside, spells that had been hidden from view for nearly 2 millennia. Similarly, the surfaces of worn rings, or the faded inscriptions on a bronze pendant, can be analyzed using spectroscopic techniques. X-ray fluorescence spectroscopy, for instance, can determine the exact elemental composition of a metal or a gemstone without any damage, telling us where the raw materials might have originated and helping to authenticate artifacts. It can also detect traces of wear, revealing which parts of a ring were touched most often, perhaps rubbed by an anxious owner seeking comfort from the symbol it bore. These technologies are our truest form of time travel, allowing us to peer inside sealed containers, read folded letters, and decipher worn-away texts, transforming inert objects back into the powerful, personal talismans they once were. Each scan and spectral analysis is a conversation with the past, confirming that the symbols we study were not just artistic flourishes, but were deeply believed to hold the very power of gods, emperors, and magic itself. It's astonishing to realize that the visual language crafted by Roman artisans millennia ago didn't vanish with the empire's fall. Instead, it was quietly passed down, reinterpreted, and ultimately woven into the very fabric of modern jewelry design. Walk into any major jewelry boutique today, or scroll through a popular online artisan marketplace, and you will find the echoes of Rome staring back at you. The motifs we've explored, the Hercules knot, the serpent, the eagle, are not relics confined to history books. They are living, breathing parts of our contemporary aesthetic, proving that truly powerful symbols are timeless. This enduring appeal is rooted in a shared human desire for meaning. Just as a Roman sought protection from a Fascinus or connection to the gods through a carved intaglio, a modern individual gravitates toward these ancient forms for similar reasons. We may no longer fear the evil eye in the same way, but we still crave talismans for good luck, strength, and love. A modern jewelry designer reinterpreting the Hercules knot isn't just creating a beautiful twist of gold. They are tapping into a 2,000-year-old narrative of unbreakable bonds and resilience. The symbol carries that historical weight, adding a layer of depth and story to a piece that a purely abstract design simply cannot match. It allows the wearer to connect with a sense of history, to wear a piece of the ancient world and all its associated virtues. The fashion industry, always in search of narratives with gravitas, has enthusiastically embraced these classical motifs. Luxury houses frequently mine Greco-Roman themes for their collections. You might find a high-end bracelet where the clasp is a meticulously modernized version of the Hercules knot, rendered in polished white gold and accented with diamonds. A sleek pendant might feature a minimalist eagle with wings outstretched, a clear descendant of the Roman legionary standard, now symbolizing personal ambition and freedom rather than imperial power. These designs are often stripped of their more overt mythological details, refined into cleaner, more abstract lines that suit a modern palette, but their ancestral DNA is unmistakable. Beyond high fashion, these symbols have found a massive following in the realm of artisanal and personalized jewelry. On platforms like Etsy, small-scale jewelers create pieces that directly cater to a desire for personal symbolism. It's here that you'll find a sterling silver ring engraved with a delicate ouroboros, the serpent eating its tail, chosen by someone as a token of their journey through a difficult period of change and renewal. You'll see couples exchanging bracelets fashioned with the dextrum iunctio, the clasped hands, as a modern wedding vow, a physical emblem of their commitment that feels both ancient and deeply personal. This trend highlights a key reason for their persistence: versatility. The same serpent that symbolized healing for an ancient Roman can represent eternal love or cyclical renewal for someone today. The symbols are a visual vocabulary that we can adapt to articulate our own personal stories. The commercial appeal is also undeniable. Brands can leverage the built-in prestige and recognition of these motifs. A jewelry line doesn't need to explain what an eagle represents. Its connotations of power and majesty are already ingrained in the cultural consciousness. This instant recognizability makes these designs powerfully marketable. Furthermore, the clean geometry of many Roman patterns, the interlocking loops of the Hercules knot, the perfect circle of the Ouroboros, the sharp profile of an eagle, aligns perfectly with both classic and contemporary design principles. They feel simultaneously ancient and modern, a quality that gives them incredible staying power across shifting trends. Ultimately, the journey of these symbols from the Roman Forum to a modern jewelry box speaks to a universal human impulse. We have always used adornment to communicate who we are, what we value, and what we hope for. The Romans perfected a language for this, and we are still fluent in it. When we choose a ring adorned with an ancient knot or a pendant featuring a mythological creature, we are participating in a tradition that spans centuries. We are asserting that some themes, love, protection, strength, renewal, are eternal. The materials and techniques may have evolved, but the core desire remains to carry a piece of meaning, a fragment of a story, and a connection to something greater than ourselves, beautifully crafted in metal and stone. Even with all these incredible discoveries and advanced technologies, the field of Roman jewelry is far from a closed book. In fact, some of the most fascinating conversations happening among archaeologists and historians today revolve around the pieces that defy easy explanation, the artifacts that remain stubbornly ambiguous. For every clear-cut symbol like an eagle or a Hercules knot, there exists another that continues to spark debate and fuel competing theories, reminding us that the Romans were just as complex and occasionally inscrutable as we are. Consider a beautifully carved carnelian ring stone depicting a captivating scene. A graceful crane stands beside a meticulously detailed oil lamp. At first glance, it seems charming but enigmatic. What story is it telling? One school of thought suggests this is a purely practical symbol. The crane was a common sight in Roman courtyards, often acting as a feathered alarm system. Paired with a lamp, which provided light through the night, the image could be a simple, elegant wish for vigilance and protection around the clock. But another, more compelling theory delves into the realm of mystery cults. The crane was a creature sacred to Isis, the Egyptian goddess whose worship spread like wildfire across the Roman Empire. Her rituals often involved nocturnal processions with lamps. This ring, then, might not be a general protective charm, but a very specific identifier. It could be a secret sign worn by an initiate of the cult of Isis, a way to recognize fellow believers in a crowded street without uttering a word. The same object holds two entirely different potential meanings, one mundane and domestic, the other deeply spiritual and clandestine. Without a written description from the original owner, we may never know for certain, and that ambiguity is precisely what makes the study so endlessly engaging. This challenge of interpretation is compounded by a far more nefarious problem: the specter of forgery. The immense value and demand for classical artifacts have made them a prime target for skilled forgers for centuries. Museums around the world have discovered that prized pieces in their collections are not ancient treasures, but clever fakes, sometimes dating back to the Renaissance itself. Distinguishing a genuine Roman intaglio from a masterful 16th century Italian copy requires a forensic eye. Experts must analyze every detail, from the specific style of the engraving and the tools used to the very type of wear on the stone. A genuine Roman gem will show a particular pattern of microabrasions from being pressed repeatedly into wax seals over a lifetime of use. A forgery might have artificial wear that looks convincing to the naked eye, but under magnification reveals a modern tool's telltale marks. The composition of the metal in the setting can be tested, revealing trace elements that pinpoint its origin to a modern mine rather than an ancient one. These investigations are a high-stakes blend of art history and materials science, where a single misstep can see a museum publicly celebrating a brilliant deception for decades. Perhaps the most tantalizing mysteries are those that emerge from the objects themselves, the ones that seem to reference stories or beliefs now lost to time. A unique gold pendant might be found depicting a strange, composite creature, a rooster with a lion's head, holding a whip. It doesn't match any known myth from Ovid or Virgil. Is it a depiction of a local folk tale from a remote province? A story that was never written down? Could it be a representation of a demon or a protective spirit from a magical text that hasn't survived? Historians become detectives, piecing together clues from scattered sources. They might cross-reference this bizarre image with descriptions in fragmented papyri from Egypt, or with cursed tablets found in Britain, hoping to find a mention of a similar entity. Sometimes a breakthrough comes from an unexpected place, like a passing mention in a long-ignored letter or a faded fresco in a newly excavated villa. These unresolved puzzles are not failures of scholarship. They are invitations. They remind us that for all we have learned about the Roman world, there are still whispers of their lives that we have yet to fully hear. Secrets still waiting in the gold and silver they left behind. Now that we've journeyed through the rich meanings behind these ancient symbols, you might be wondering how you can spot them for yourself on your next museum visit. The good news is that with a few key pointers, you can start to see the hidden messages in these artifacts, transforming a case of beautiful objects into a gallery of fascinating stories. First, train your eye to look for the most common protective symbols. Keep an eye out for the phallus, often depicted in a more stylized, almost abstract way. It might look like a simple winged charm, or be incorporated into a larger design. The serpent is another incredibly popular motif, easily identified by its coiled form, often wrapping around a finger as a ring or a bracelet band, its scales carefully detailed and sometimes featuring small gemstone eyes. Next, pay close attention to the materials. Roman jewelers worked with a specific palette. Look for the warm glow of gold, but also for the sheen of silver and the depth of bronze. Gemstones were often cabochon cut smooth and polished into a dome shape without faceted edges, and set into rings and pendants. Popular stones include carnelian, a deep orange red, often used for intaglio engraving, deep blue lapis lazuli, and vibrant green malachite. The presence of these specific materials can often be a clue that you're looking at a genuine Roman piece. Also, look for evidence of wear. A ring that was worn every day for a lifetime will have a specific pattern of soft abrasion on the highest points of the design, a subtle testament to its long-lost owner. Don't just glance at the object, really study its surface for engraved scenes. This is where the most sophisticated stories are hidden. If you see a tiny, intricate carving depicting a figure with a lion's skin and a club, that's Hercules. A goddess with a helmet and an owl is Minerva. A scene showing two hands clasped together is almost certainly the dextrum iunctio, the symbol of marriage. Museums are fantastic because they often provide magnifying glasses or have digital screens next to the display case that allow you to zoom in on these incredible details that are impossible to see with the naked eye. Make use of them. It's like having a key to a secret world. Finally, read the museum label carefully, but also think beyond it. The card might say, gold ring with engraved gem. But now you can ask your own questions. What is the gem actually showing? Is it a god, an animal, or an abstract symbol? Why might someone have worn this? Was it for protection, for love, or to show loyalty to an emperor? This knowledge doesn't just make you a more informed viewer. It actively connects you to the individual who once owned the piece. You're no longer just seeing a beautiful artifact. You're glimpsing a person's hopes, fears, and identity, making your encounter with history infinitely more personal and profoundly moving. From the protective power of the Fascinus and the bulla to the sacred bonds of the Hercules knot, and from the divine authority of the eagle to the hidden faith of the Chi-Rho, we have journeyed through a secret language written not in words, but in gold, silver, and stone. Each piece we have explored is far more than an ancient accessory. It is a keyhole through which we can peer into the very soul of the Roman world. These symbols reveal a society deeply preoccupied with the same fundamental human concerns we grapple with today. The desire for safety, the need for love, the pursuit of power, and the search for divine meaning. They show us a people who were intensely practical, profoundly superstitious, and incredibly sophisticated in their use of visual communication. A simple ring could be a legal signature, a magical shield, and a declaration of political loyalty all at once, proving that for the Romans, the personal was always deeply interwoven with the political and the spiritual. This exploration does more than just satisfy our curiosity about the past. It fundamentally changes how we see history. It moves us beyond the grand narratives of emperors and armies, and lets us listen to the whispers of individual lives. When we stand before a museum case, we are no longer just looking at a beautiful object. We are witnessing a parent's hope for their child's safety encapsulated in a golden bulla, a soldier's prayer for courage etched into a carnelian ring, and a couple's vow of eternal love frozen in the clasped hands on a wedding band. These artifacts are tiny, intimate time capsules that allow us to connect across millennia with the fears, hopes, and dreams of people who were, in so many ways, just like us. They remind us that history is not a remote, monolithic story, but a vast tapestry woven from countless personal experiences, each one valuable, and each one adding depth to our understanding. Now, this is where the story turns from theirs to yours. The next time you have the opportunity to visit a museum, I encourage you to seek out their ancient jewelry collection. Take a moment to lean in close. Look for the intricate details we discussed: the coiled serpent on a bracelet, the tiny engraved god on a ring stone, the subtle symbolism hidden in plain sight. See if you can decipher the silent message it was meant to carry. Did it promise protection, declare love, assert power? Let your imagination fill in the story of the person who once wore it. And if you have ever encountered a piece of ancient jewelry that left a lasting impression on you, whether in a museum abroad or in your local gallery, I would love to hear about it. Share your own experiences and discoveries in the comments below. Let's continue this conversation and build a community of curious explorers. By learning to see the hidden meanings in these ancient treasures, we do more than study the past. We ensure that these long silent voices and their powerful stories are never truly forgotten. Perhaps the most intriguing and darkly practical adaptation of jewelry was the poison ring. This was a ring with a hidden compartment beneath the bezel, often concealed by a cleverly hinged or screw-top lid. While some might have used such a discreet space to hold a tiny, personal perfume, a quick refresh in the crowded forum, amidst potential for more nefarious purposes, captured the ancient imagination. Historical gossip, found in the works of writers like Suetonius, is filled with whispers of political assassinations and desperate suicides carried out with the help of such devices. The idea that a senator could discreetly empty a lethal powder into a rival's cup during a banquet, using a device worn openly on his own hand, speaks to a world of profound paranoia and ruthless political intrigue. It transforms a piece of jewelry from a simple adornment into a potential weapon, a tangible representation of the deadly stakes of power in ancient Rome. In a similar vein of hidden function, the practicality of Roman design extended to hygiene. It was not uncommon for both men and women to wear rings that doubled as tiny functional tools. One fascinating example is the stirrup ring, which featured a small, pointed protrusion. This wasn't merely decorative, it was a personal strigil, used to scrape sweat, dirt, and oil from the skin after bathing or exercise. In the bustling public baths, having your own hygienic tool conveniently on your finger was a mark of both practicality and fastidiousness. Other rings incorporated miniature spoons for ear cleaning or tiny picks, making the wearer's jewelry box a compact utility kit. This blend of beauty and everyday function shows a side of the Romans that was intensely pragmatic. Even in their luxury, the meaning of a symbol could also flip entirely depending on who was wearing it. Take the rabbit, a creature we associate with timidity. For a Roman woman, a pendant or bracelet charm depicting a rabbit was a powerful amulet for fertility and a swift, easy childbirth, owing to the animal's famous rate of reproduction. However, if a Roman man were to wear the same symbol, it could be socially perilous. On him, the rabbit might be interpreted as a sign of effeminacy or even cowardice, a public relations disaster in a culture that so deeply valued masculine virtue and bravery. This stark contrast reminds us that Roman society had rigidly defined gender roles, and the language of jewelry was one of the many ways these rules were silently enforced and communicated. Even the specific finger on which a ring was worn could send a powerful message. While we associate wedding bands with the left hand, evidence suggests some elite Romans preferred the right hand for displaying their most important signet rings. The right hand was the one used for gestures of power, for signing documents, for sealing oaths, and for greeting others. A large, impressive signet ring on the right index finger was a constant, visible reminder of the wearer's authority and their capacity to conduct business and make binding agreements. It was a non-verbal claim to status and credibility, a small but significant detail in the complex social performance of daily life. Finally, the Romans were masters of creative recycling, especially when it came to heirlooms. It was a common and touching practice to repurpose a beloved piece of jewelry for a new generation. A father might have the gold from his own mother's bracelet melted down and reworked into a brand new bulla for his newborn son, physically transferring the family's protective legacy. Or a beautifully carved intaglio gemstone from a cracked ring could be carefully removed and set into a new, more fashionable pendant. This practice adds a deeply personal, emotional layer to many artifacts we find. A single piece might represent the layered history of a family, with its value rooted not just in the material, but in the memory of the ancestors who wore it first, their story literally reforged for the future.